Welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. First of all, before we get into the episode, just want to give a thanks to Ryan from a Red Point of View for giving us the opportunity to get on Sky Sports this week and give our thoughts on all things Aberdeen. Quite ironic after a couple of weeks ago saying that we weren't good enough for Sky Sports News. So I knew also mentioning him in my 442 previews would have its benefits eventually. And for those of you expecting to see or hear Calum on the show, unfortunately, he will not be joining the show this week due to a family bereavement. He's decided just to take the week off. So our thoughts are with Calum after the weekend. But joining me on the podcast, as he always seems to do when things go wrong with Aberdeen, is Jonny Main. So Jonny, thanks for ably stepping in again.
No, thanks, Glen. It feels like you're picking on me at this stage, but I'm doing it voluntarily. I'm not being held over a barrel. But yeah, happy to step in, and I hope Calum's okay and he's back next week.
Yeah, I think he's hoping to be back next week. I'm sure he'll appreciate any messages that come his way. But yes, no, you're the only one that ever seems to volunteer their services if we're in desperate need. So we do appreciate it here as well. And let's get into the football from the weekend, because I didn't want to call the game against Celtic. I hate calling games against the Old Firm a free hit or a hiding to nothing. But it really was the feeling going into the game this weekend. But, you know, the optimist in every one of us hopes we take something, hopes we keep it tight in the opening exchanges. But I think we barely lasted 90 seconds before Calum McGregor rifled one into the back of the net. And I mean, it was always going to be a long afternoon, but conceding that early makes it even longer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think going into the game, the feeling I had, I'm usually really pessimistic until the day of the game. And even against Celtic at Parkhead, I'll think, maybe we can sneak a point, or you never know, a win. But this Saturday, I was just like, there's no way we're ever going to take anything from the game. I just hope we compete. And I don't think we did that. So I don't even think we met my low expectations of what we were going to do on Saturday, which was pretty disappointing, to be honest.
Yeah, and you know, we always speak about the team news when we look at the games as well. Of course, not really many surprises in terms of the starting 11, but Connor Barron once again excluded from the match day squad. Do you think Barry Robson's trying to make a point here around Connor Barron with potentially not signing that new contract, or do you think I'm just reading too much into it?
Potentially you're reading too much into it, actually, because the way I see it is that this isn't really Barry Robson's team, is it? They're not his players. He's just filling in. So I don't think he would see, it was his decision to make to do that. I just maybe think he thinks that his head's not in the right place, so he's not performing in training. I think it could be as simple as that, which is disappointing. And, we do wonder what it's going to lead to for him after this season, because it appears he's on the way out. But he's not had a lot of game time. When he has played, he's not been very good. So, I'd fear for him a little bit. But no, I think he's just not been good enough lately.
No, and I probably agree with that. And I know a few people have also picked up on the point of, with Matty Kennedy being out of contract in the summer, why not in games like this maybe offer the opportunity up to Jayden Richardson? But again, I think you're not really going to learn much from Jayden Richardson in a game like the weekend. Similar, I kind of have the same thoughts about Jay Gorter as well. Yes, he made some good saves, saves you probably expect your goalkeeper to make, but for me personally, I think it's still difficult to judge him after the first two games that he's had for Aberdeen.
Yeah, pretty difficult to judge anyone from Saturday, over and above what we've already seen from them in the last couple of months. I kind of thought, I'm a bit annoyed that we're still persistent in playing Matty Kennedy at right back. And he's not a right back. When we have a right back and we have a left back, and we have two full backs on the bench, it doesn't say a hell of a lot for their abilities and our transfer dealings. that the two fullbacks that we did have in the matchday squad were nowhere near the starting team. I did feel maybe, I mean, again, there'd be no judgment. I mean, Jayden Richardson, he's got pace, but he's got a hell of a lot more pace than Matty Kennedy has. This iteration of Matty Kennedy anyway. And you try to tell me that Matty Kennedy's a better right back than Jayden Richardson. I'm not sure I buy that. I mean, yeah, it's just weird. But again, like you say, there was no real surprises from the starting 11. Only maybe Barron not being in the squad at all would be a surprise. And it was kind of the team I was expecting, to be honest.
Yeah, it was just a team I was expecting as well. But, you speak about having a kind of low bar of confidence that the team didn't meet. And I think as fans, even if the confidence wasn't there to go and get a result this weekend, we at least expect the team to show a bit of fight, show a bit of that they're at least interested in performing at the weekend. And really in the opening exchanges, it didn't feel like that was the case at all. I mean, our defending has been poor by and large the whole season, but I mean, the defending for the first two goals, I think I actually said on Twitter, calling it defending is actually harsh because we just gifted Celtic that opening two goals by very much sitting off them. And I think I can't remember the Twitter account that highlighted it, so apologies for that. But the opening goal and was the second goal, they showed how both Matty Pollock and Angus MacDonald were almost pointing at Hatate, and neither of them picked up the Japanese midfielder. So again, there seemed maybe a bit of confusion in that backline about responsibility as well. And again, just kind of summing up where we are just now.
Yeah, the central defensive partnership's been in the door a few weeks, 2 weeks. I don't blame them for the communication breakdown there. I think it was from the dung heap you were talking about, the account who tweeted that. I think, we knew that, it was going to be tough. Celtic are by far and away the best team in the country. And we always say, and this is a cliche, and we always say that if you're going to compete or if you're going to get anything at all from the game, you have to outfight them. You have to match their intensity. We were nowhere near their intensity, and that's what really annoyed me. I thought if we can show intensity and fight and desire, and I'm not saying foul them, but at least try and tackle them. And we just seemed to, in the opening exchanges, we were standing, and I thought at one point I was looking at our back line and our midfield, and both lines were standing on the edge of the 18-yard box, and again, that second goal you were talking about was an absolute joke. Hatate just finds an easy pocket of space for himself where he shouldn't, and there's three defenders standing watching him. And those defenders, as Hatate approached them, I know Hatate is a good player. He's actually probably the best player in the league for my money. But at least make a tackle. I mean, at what point are you going to make contact with him? You're already in your own penalty box. You're just inviting him to shoot, and he did. And that was 2-0. And at that point, I thought, this could be McGee-like. This could be of McGee proportions. I was fearing that it could be that bad. And it could have been a lot worse than it was. It could have been 5 by half-time. I think they were fairly wasteful with a few chances they did have after that. And, I counted at least another 3 chances where the ball was either cleared off the line or, good chance passed up by them, or Horter or Gorter. I think it was Rob McLean called him Horter in commentary, but you never know with Rob. So Gorter, he did what he could, but it was just a barrage. It was a training exercise for Celtic, and that's what I suppose really annoys me.
Yeah, and I was messaging my mate Keith, who works at bookies, and he said, I think the damning stat for going into the weekend's game is that Betfred were only offering four score markets on Aberdeen: 1-0, 2-1, 2-0, and 3-2. That's the only markets that they were prepared to offer Aberdeen to win the game. Anything else, if you wanted, you had to phone up the traders. And he turned off after the second goal. He says, I can't put up with this anymore. Message me updates. And I felt I was messaging him every couple of minutes to say, should have been three, good save, missed opportunity. And I think had we gone in half time 5 or 6-0 down, I think both of us are in agreement we couldn't really complain at that scoreline. And I think that's kind of really damning of the performance that we put in that opening 45, that not only did we not lay a glove on Celtic, but we were, if it was if it was a boxing match, the towel would have been very much close to being thrown in.
Yeah, I was quite happy if the ref had just called it at half time and we walked off. It would have taken 2-0 then, which is a shocking state of affairs, really, for an Aberdeen supporter, and one like myself who is fortunate enough to have seen us competing with them in the past. It just seems like a different lifetime, But I think, again, we'll go back to the point. The point isn't that we didn't win and we got beat 4-0. I think if you'd showed me the score at the end and I hadn't watched the game, I would have probably said 4-0. Yeah, probably would have expected that. Again, damning. But it was the manner of the defeat, right? So it wasn't that it was 4-0 and we had a go and a couple of yellow cards and we got stuck in about them and they were just better than us. It was just we stood and watched them. Yeah. And again, I think the two easiest games they'll have at Celtic Park this year are against Aberdeen, and that shouldn't be the case. My expectations are low, right? But I expect us to be better than that.
Yeah, you could argue it's the easiest 9 points that they're going to get all season if you want to throw in the game against Pittodrie. Of course, that's now 180 minutes that they've played against us this season, and we haven't even registered a single shot on target. I think your tweet that you put up about the 5 shots, I was struggling to even rack my brain that we'd even had 5 attempts. And I think it was, 23 minutes into the first half, you had Bojan Miovski screaming in the midfield because of how deep that they were sitting. And I think, if that didn't make you want to turn off, I don't know what wouldn't have, because it was just kind of just summed up where we were and the fact that we were just willing just to absorb the pressure. And again, I know a lot of people, you mentioned it as well there, the fact that we didn't even pick up a single booking. I think much to the stream that I found was Celtic TV commentary, much to their bewilderment that Graham Shinney escaped a booking as well in the first half. But yeah, second half especially, we didn't even look to kind of rough Celtic up. And when I had you on after the Hearts defeat, and you said, we were probably lucky, the fact that Hearts had one eye on the cup game. Probably same goes for us in that Celtic game. We were probably lucky that Celtic potentially had one eye on that final that they've got next week against Rangers, and potentially took their foot off the gas for large parts of that second half, but obviously then rang the changes as well. But yeah, certainly that first half, you could understand why Bojan was cut, a frustrated figure.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't really help himself. Whenever he got the ball, it didn't stick, or didn't appear to stick. But again, it was a thankless task he had. I can't even remember, and this is unusual even for games we're rubbish in. I can't remember Duke having much of an impact in the going forward either. Yeah. Maybe a couple of runs in the first 20 minutes, but he completely faded out of the game. Miovski, it doesn't seem, it's not his game. I don't think back to goal is his game at all.
No.
And that was what we were. The first half, just, yeah, I'd lost interest after the second goal. I was just waiting for the third, the fourth, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just thought, please make it end, because this could be really damaging. And actually, I don't know, to be honest, if it could be any more damaging than getting beaten by a junior team in the cup. And I do think we're still suffering the mental scars of the last month or so of hammerings, and how many goals have we lost now away from home, in the last 3 matches in the league. It's absurd. It really is.
Yeah, and I think, just even listening to the Celtic TV commentary where they said Celtic have only conceded 9 home goals this season, And I think we'd only scored 7 away from home, just showed the kind of thankless task that we had on our hands. But yeah, that point about the recent months, I was on TalkLivi previewing the game this weekend, and they kind of asked me where it's all gone wrong. And I actually do think it's kind of all gone wrong from the previous encounter with Celtic at Pittodrie, where it certainly felt like Jim Goodwin didn't believe in his players to go out and get a result. And we then follow it up with the most heartbreaking way to throw away a victory against Rangers. And we've never mentally recovered from that. Well, certainly the players haven't. I know the fans are still struggling to as well. But I think that's really where we are. But, in terms of the weekend as well, yes, it's a damaging defeat in terms of, we spoke about on the preview, not wanting it to be kind of a humiliating defeat to try and destroy any confidence that we took from the Motherwell game. But I struggle kind of to feel how that's not the case anymore, because we didn't really put in much effort. There's not much for me to feel positive going into what should be a huge game this weekend against Livingston. And I know you laughed at the fact that I said, in terms of a top 6 battle, but realistically, the top 6 hopes are still there, starting this weekend, of course, against Livingston. But you're not going to be the only one that's feeling like that after the weekend.
No, I completely I feel disengaged, I suppose, from this season now, because I think thankfully we're probably too far ahead of United and Killie and Ross County to be drawn into anything worse than we are at the moment. But I just can't see. Before, you were right. Before the weekend, I would have thought 4th is still up for grabs to a certain extent, and that's the bare minimum we should be looking for, and all the rest of it. But I just think this team, this group of players, just needs to get through this season without being relegated, which I think we'll do. It's not going to make for much pleasant viewing over the next few months anyway, if that is the case. I just can't see us going up. I just can't see us being consistent. We might beat Livy on Saturday. It's a game that we're at home. Again, we're much better at home than we are away from home. But Livy are a funny team in that they battle and get in our face, and they're fairly confident. I think the defeat at the weekend that they suffered, I don't think will put them up or down, really, because it was against Rangers, and they were in the game very much until the sending off, I think, of Wamionga.
Yeah.
Which was never a sending off. A ridiculous decision anyway. But yeah, I think they'll be confident. I think they'll be looking to get in about us. I mean, any team coming to Pittodrie now will just think if we can get in about them, we can cause them trouble. And I just think it depends what version of Aberdeen turns up on Saturday. If it's the Motherwell version, we might get 3 points. But again, Motherwell, we're going through pretty much the crisis of confidence, and we are still seem to be suffering.
If you look at the way Motherwell have kind of got that new manager bounce or interim manager bounce that Aberdeen seem just unable to ever get, it maybe just shows that we can't read too much into that result against Motherwell, because they were very much going through the motions like we were under Jim Goodwin, where we were just unable to buy a victory until he went out the door. So again, how much can we really take from that victory? But of course, I saw some people say that we played better in that second half against Celtic on the weekend. But I mean, is that how far we've stooped, that it was better because it took them so long to actually break down the defence? I mean, did we play much better in the second half?
No, they took the foot off the gas. That was my reading of it anyway. I thought we might get away with 2-0. And Joe Hart tried his best to give us a goal. He must have been feeling a bit charitable, but we even couldn't take those gifts. No, I don't think we played particularly better. in the second half. I just think Celtic, and they tend to start really fast and get ahead, and then they can just ease off the gas a bit. But we lost 2 goals in the second half. It was still a pretty humbling defeat. But like I said at the start, I think I wouldn't have been surprised if you'd have showed me the score and I hadn't seen the game, which again is an indication of how how low the confidence amongst the fans are. And you could argue 4-0 away to Celtic. Is it humiliating? I mean, they've got it. I mean, they're levels above. I think they're even levels above Rangers, in terms of their attacking prowess and the way they can destroy teams. So 6 against Hibs is a humiliation.
It probably just kind of shows where we are just now, that we almost don't feel it as a humiliation. I think you're absolutely right in the assessment that you say about if you showed somebody the scoreline, none of us would have been surprised. To see the scoreline, I think it's more the surprise comes if you actually watch the game. But maybe the surprise comes from the way Barry Robson set the team up, or the team played. And I think for me, not really surprised at how we played, given what we've seen over the course of recent weeks away from home. But for me, more disappointment, because I expected more fight from a Barry Robson team. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I don't think, the words I'm trying to find here, I'm pretty sure that Barry Robson did not send them out and say, just watch Celtic passing the ball, about your 18-yard box, give them loads of space to pick their passes, give them seconds on the ball on the edge of your penalty area to find good players. Give good players that amount of time that we did in the first half, and they're going to punish you. And that's exactly what they did. I think that he probably sent them out to close them down an awful lot more than they did, and they just didn't. I mean, whether that's a confidence thing or whether that's just they were scared. I don't know what would cause that to happen, but I'm pretty damn sure Barry Robson didn't send the team out to be that passive. I'm almost certain of it.
No, and the change at halftime obviously drew a bit of interest on social media with Bojan coming off. Again, it's on a hiding to nothing. He was not in the game in that first 45, and protecting him for the big game of the weekend against Livingston potentially. But I mean, shows maybe where we are. But it's just one of them things. A substitution that will go down that some will compare to the GMS Don Ball at Ibrox under McInnes.
Yeah, as long as we don't utter the words, these games don't define our season, I'll be happy. I just think we were looking to limit the damage at that stage. And I can't even, do you know what? I can't even remember who came on for Bojan at halftime, because I was that disengaged. But it seemed to work because we didn't get them. It was Hayden Coulson, yeah, okay. And Johnny Hayes moved to a more central role. Right, That's right, and still didn't really do enough really for me to justify staying on the field. But yeah, just hideous all round.
Yeah, and of course, even worse when we then do concede the third and fourth goals, meaning we've now conceded 51 goals in the 26 league games so far this season. Really summing up where we are defensively as a team, of course, having to change the team from the previous week against Motherwell. This really unsettled back four is really coming back to haunt us. I just wonder if going into the game this weekend, I guess we're going to change it again, of course, with Liam Scales and Ross McCrory becoming available. But do you change it this weekend? Because, of course, folk are going to ask questions about right back. And if you're bringing one of Liam Scales back into the team, who out of Matty Pollock and Angus MacDonald do you take out of that team?
I take Jack McKenzie out, probably.
And play Liam Scales at left back?
Potentially, yeah. I would consider doing that. I don't think we're going to see Jayden Richardson. I think we'll just put that out there right now. Unless Matty Kennedy has an injury and we're forced to play him, I don't think we're going to see him. playing again this season. Maybe Coulson comes in. I really don't know, but I wouldn't drop Pollock and McDonald, because I think if they are going to be with us for the rest of the season, which it looks like they are, we need to give them game time. We need to get them settled in the team. They did look as if they just met each other a month ago, which is actually, factually correct. Probably actually not even a month ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, they've had limited time to work on an understanding. I suppose the only good thing is we won't be under as much pressure on Saturday. It'll be more like the St Mirren game or the Motherwell game in terms of possession, I would imagine. So, they'll have more time on the ball. They'll have less pressure from the opposing attackers. But I would keep them in, potentially put Scales to left back. I think Scales does come back in, and McCrory to right back or midfield. And Clarkson, again, anonymous on Saturday. Does he need to spell out of the team? I know he's got the creative touch, but I just didn't see anything from him at all. And is he the right person? I think, was he playing in a number 6 role?
Yeah, I think he was.
Playmaker role. He just didn't get in the game, and maybe it's time to give him.
You could say that for about pretty much every outfield player from the weekend, that none of them really got into the game, and it's difficult to judge any of the players on. But is it also difficult to judge Barry Robson on that result at the weekend, in terms of continuing to keep him in the job until the end of the season? Obviously, the club released that statement last week that with Alan Burrows coming into the club at the end of the month, he will begin to help with the interviewing process of the candidates. And of course, last night as well, we're recording this on Monday, the club announced that Dave Cormack is to go under open heart surgery. So all the best to the chairman ahead of that surgery, despite how much we will take the mick out of him and criticise him for some of the decisions that he makes at the club. We do wish you all the best with your surgery as well. But so no pressure, Alan, for your first role at the club, with the chairman taking a back seat. But yeah, does that result from the weekend further put pressure on making an appointment between now and the end of the season? Or does the fact that we are likely safe from relegation, of course, mathematically, still not, but with the relative safety of that, would there still be less pressure on Robson between now and the end of the season, knowing that we should be safe from relegation? European football is still a possibility, depending obviously how the next couple of games go, but just make sure we're not absolutely terrible between now and the end of the season.
It's a bit of a conundrum, and I don't envy the incoming CEO to make that decision. I don't think it's not. So the game, the performance and the result on Saturday has no bearing for me on Barry Robson's status. Whether he gets to the end of the season might be a stretch for me, because unless we're waiting for the right man to come available in the summer, I guess you would probably, if I was to ask you, would you rather we're in this position in 12 months' time, having rushed something now just to get a manager in and appointed, or would you rather we took time? I think we're probably at the point now where we're going to have to find, or the chairman is going to have to dig deep again to rebuild a hugely unbalanced squad. So we're in a situation where, I mean, even a couple of months ago, I was thinking, even if we were to bin Goodwin, there's still the raw material is there. And after the last month, I just don't think these players can ever get over the last couple of months in playing for Aberdeen. I just think they're done with the club. And I wouldn't be disappointed if every single one of them was to go. I mean, I know that's not going to happen, but I think we need to rebuild the squad again in the summer. And I think it's just is it almost, are we saying we're writing off Europe, qualifying for Europe this season to get it right next season? I'm not sure many people would stand for that kind of attitude. So I expect, Robson's going to be taking the team until Burrows gets in and appoints a manager. You have to hope, or I do anyway, that he's given the power by the chairman to appoint the manager. Actually, technically speaking, it should be the director of football who's appointing the manager, but that's another story altogether. So I'm hoping we take our time, and if it comes out, in the fullness of time that our search has turned up a preferred candidate who isn't available until the end of the season, I think we can live with that.
Yeah.
Or I certainly can. I don't speak for everybody else, but I could live with that as long as we don't go down, as long as we get the right man. But it is it's a game of high stakes roulette, really.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's certainly become more apparent over recent weeks, is how important this appointment is going to be, especially if we are going to miss out on European football next season, because we're becoming further behind Hearts in terms of that financial gulf, which, we've seen how well they've recruited this season, how well they've put themselves into third and then not looked back, whereas we put ourselves into third and then absolutely shot the bed. And it's just, we've not really chucked this season as much as we did last season. The Scottish Cup, yes, is probably somewhere that you could look at, but the league form is just, I don't even know what to put it down to right now. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the pressures of getting this new man right, because we don't want to be sitting here in 12 months' time speaking again about potentially missing out on Europe for a third season in a row, and all that comes with that. And yeah, I just hope that Alan Burrows is trusted to at least hold the interviews, and that his opinion is held to high regard. It's just how much involvement does the director of football have in that as well. And of course, there was rumours, of course, circulating this weekend around Gordon Strachan being linked, which I think potentially has been proved just to be rumours. And then, of course, the Evening Express running a story on the Urawa Reds manager, Ricardo Rodriguez, as well. There seems to be names, coming to and for every other day, with managers, agents putting their names in the forefront. But I think that's where we are just now as well, is that there's no clear, still after all this time, no clear front runner for the job. There's no clear person that has that, let's get him in, and that's who we want as our manager. Because even, mentioning Ricardo Rodriguez, the more I've read about him today, the more I like the cut of his jib. But appointing a foreign manager who's never managed in Scottish football right now for us is a huge risk. And yes, it would be that exciting appointment. But as you said, if we're sitting here in 12 months' time speaking about the exact same things, we're not going to be happy that we've, not appointed the right man.
No, it is quite amusing watching the bookies markets for the next manager, and all the rumours on social media, and nobody has a clue, I don't think. And I don't think we're going to know until a few days before the appointment is made. My own personal opinion is, and I heard this, my preference, it would be that we do everything we can to prize Steve Clarke away from Scotland, whatever that is. Ask the question, say, name your price, what is it you need? At least have the conversation. And if he says, bugger off, there's nothing you can possibly do, I'm not taking over that basket case, or whatever the answer is, then fine. But at least I would ask the question. The Gordon Strachan thing, I just think, please stop, please. I don't want my boyhood heroes coming back as managers and ruining the memories that I have of them. It happened with McGee, Miller as well, to some extent, as manager. Although, God, his achievements as manager far outstrip anything we've done the last few years. I think he was sacked for finishing second, essentially. So I think Strachan's well wide of the mark. I just don't think, and he doesn't fit in with if you speak to a Celtic fan, if you spoke to to Colin again, for example, and asked him what he thought of the style of football that Strachan played, he would probably say it's the worst he's ever seen, if he was even alive at the time. I don't know how old he is, but yeah.
But then I think Steve Clarke, for me, I mean, as a passionate Tartan Army supporter, it would really pain me to see Steve Clarke leave the national side. But I don't feel he suits that footballing ethos that was reiterated in that update that really provided no update from the club last week. Because again, they said that they'd had, interest for the job from people they expected, people they didn't expect. But they are sifting through to find names that would match that philosophy and style of play. And I don't see where Steve Clarke fits that. But I suppose it then comes back to that argument of, do you play that exciting brand of football, or do you go back to basics and just get results and get us back to that level of qualifying for Europe and making us hard to beat? Because right now we are that soft touch. I mentioned it about the fact that if we go 1-0 down this weekend when Livingston come to down, I don't know if we have the capability of coming back and winning that game, because we've not done that at all this season. We've not taken any points from a losing position.
Very true. Just to circle back to Steve Clarke for a second, I hear what you're saying, and the first thing I would do if I was Alan Burrows would be to incinerate every single PowerPoint presentation lying around that has the words strategy and exciting football on it. Throw it in the bin, set fire to it, and then set fire to it again. Because ever since that nonsense was published, we've gone downhill at a rapid pace and we're a laughingstock. Yes, the principles are admirable. I get all of that. But I did stupidly have a look at this whole PowerPoint presentation yesterday, just made me actually quite angry. There's supposed to be a coordination between the lower levels of the youth teams and a proper strategy in place. And I have seen no evidence there's coordination between the underage teams and the first team. And the bit I highlighted on Twitter yesterday was the director of football's role in ensuring squad balance. Now, our squad is probably the worst balanced squad in the entire league. Yeah. And is that, if that's a metric that he's being measured on, then it's one he's failed on. Again, question is, has he got the power to implement that? And I doubt he did under Goodwin. And I doubt he does now. So, yeah, I think Steve, this is my own personal preference. Steve Clarke has shown he can get a team to be more than the sum of its parts. Yeah. And that's something that I don't think any manager for a long, long time at Aberdeen has been able to do. Even McInnes in his pomp, he was performing to our level. He very rarely got us to perform above our level, would be my take on it. And, that was good enough for second place in the league a couple of times and a cup, right? But consistently, we failed in Europe to get over the big hurdles, to get to the group stages. So we didn't ever outperform our expectations. But I think Steve Clarke could do that. He's the kind of man I would have in maybe is a bridging role between director of football or the CEO and a head coach, potentially. That might appeal to him more. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I heard Tom Watt say it on the ABZ podcast, and ever since I heard it, I've been thinking more and more that that's the way I would go, and I would do whatever it takes to get him. Whether that ever happens, I don't know.
Yeah, and you're not the only person to throw out there. I know someone that listens into the podcast regularly. Skipper goes by on Twitter. He's a big advocate of getting Steve Clarke into Pittodrie as well. But I think that's where we're at. We're just banding names about with no real substance and no real knowing if it's going to pay off. But I mean, we're struggling to speak about the football because it's that terrible that this is what is generating more content just now. But looking ahead to the game against Livingston at the weekend, Jonny, before Euan from the TalkLivi podcast joins me to preview it, what are you expecting in terms of the game this weekend? Because you could argue, do you expect a reaction? But I mean, anything, at least a bit of fight is more than what we showed at the weekend. But do you expect many changes from Barry Robson going into this weekend?
No, I think just the ones we spoke about. Scales will come back in, McCrory will come back in, and how the formation goes after that, I don't know whether he changes to back four or sticks with the three. I think will stick to pretty much the same team, middle to front. But I think in terms of what do I expect this to be a real barometer of the impact that Barry Robson's had on the team since he took over. If you look at the games that he's had in charge so far, the first one against St Mirren, ruined by the referee. We never really had much of a shot after that. The next one against Motherwell, again, Motherwell were in the bones of their arse, so it's difficult to judge how far he's taken us in that spell and how far we've come since Goodwin left. And again, at the weekend, Celtic battered us as expected. So this will be the first game, hopefully, unless the referee decides to be the star of the show again. This might be a game where this is a barometer against a team who are going well, who are settled, who are, they're going to bring all of those wonderful cliches about battling qualities, fighting, getting in our face. And, I think it's going to be, I don't want to predict it at the moment because I'm not confident we'll win. But it will be a good barometer of the progress we've made under Robson.
Yeah, no, and I think that's absolutely fair to say that, because I tend to agree, and I said that as well, that it'll be the real test of the character of this squad, the real test of the mentality of this squad, because, I still maintain that 3 points this weekend do keep that hopes of finishing in the top six alive. I don't know if you want to share in that hope and optimism, but that is the difficulty of football fans, that it will change so quickly. And I mean, you'll hear in a moment as part of the preview that, of course, Livingston do have very favourable fixtures in March, whereas we go away from home 3 times. And we know what we are away from home. So this game is about momentum, and a win could generate some momentum before we head to Tannadice. But we all know how that went last time out. So look, I'm hoping to see a bit of reaction. I'm hoping to see a bit of fight about this team, and I totally agree. I'm hoping to see a real performance that we can judge both Barry Robson and this group of players on where we are. But I was delighted to be joined by Euan Rankine from the TalkLivi podcast to get his perspective of the game from this weekend and hear all things Livingston and how they've been getting on. Euan, welcome back to the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. Nice to have you on, and unusual to have you on when Livingston are doing so well domestically, with the greatest respect, of course.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Glen. Pleasure as always. And yeah, it's been a very good season for us. We're once again, as we've done every season since we've been up, been punching well above our weight and got aspirations of European football again this season. So yeah, it's been an excellent campaign. So there's no real complaints from me, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, rarity. But I suppose Livingston coming into this game, maybe not on the best run of form, a few unexpected defeats. The Scottish Cup one certainly sticks out. Sorry to bring that up for you. But as a whole, obviously, you're speaking about European aspirations. Have you been relatively happy with the season so far? Because, of course, those top 6 hopes do remain firmly in your own hands, of course, with that game in hand coming up in a few weeks against Dundee United.
Yeah, I think top 6 is definitely the aim this season. I know Davey would say at the start of every campaign, 10th place and above is success, and I'm very much of that opinion as well at Livy. Just given the resources that we've got at our disposal, we should finish bottom of the league every season. So 10th and above is success, but I think we have a squad that's capable of at least getting in the top 6, and then if you get in the top 6 with the top 5 all qualifying for Europe, it's as good a chance as you'll ever have of getting European football, and be the first time we've qualified for Euro since 2002. So I think it's, and I know speaking to Davey as well, that's his ultimate aspiration, is to take Livingston into European football. And I think the start to the campaign has certainly given us that. I think what's made a massive difference this year is we've had more or less the same squad as last year. We've not had a great deal of players moving on, other than really Alan Forrest, who was a regular in the side last year. You could say Matt Stryjek as well, goalkeeper, went down to Wickham, but I think we've improved in the goalkeeper department with Shamal George, massively improved, because I know you guys are big fans of Matt Stryjek because he gifted you a couple last year, but certainly from our point of view, Shamal George has made a massive difference in that department. But the team's been very consistent from last year, and probably since we've been promoted, it's the first year Davies had a pretty settled squad going into the new campaign, and most guys tied down on a deal. So that's helped us, I think, massively as well going into this season, and you can see that with the results so far this campaign as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the goalkeeping situation as well. You just need to look at the game when we played you last down in Livingston, where normally we're gifted a goal by your goalkeeper, but Shamal George had a quite inspired game at times, but also I know VAR was heavily involved. And I think this is what makes this encounter this weekend a bit tricky to know how it's going to go, because I know despite losing 5-0 on the last visit to Pittodrie, you guys at TalkLivi were pretty pleased on the whole with how Livingston performed. That the game really does change on that red card for Fitzwater, and I still maintain that the last encounter was heavily influenced by VAR and all the penalties that were awarded. I don't think that really kind of helped the flow. We didn't really see the game, both teams kind of playing out as best they could have. So, and obviously since the two teams last met, we've changed manager. We're still going through that transition period. So, I mean, I don't know how you feel. Of course, you guys have done your own preview as well, which people can check out. We'll come to that as well. But what are your thoughts going into the weekend's game?
Yeah, certainly when you talk about the last game at Pittodrie, I think it's the most bizarrely satisfied I've been with a 5-0 defeat. Because for 40 minutes of the game, I thought we were excellent. It's as good a away performance as you could ask for. The only thing that was missing was probably the couple of goals that initial 40 minutes deserved. But had a couple of glaring opportunities, and then it's one individual mistake has cost us a man and a penalty, and you're going to really struggle to get back into the game. And certainly start of the season, Aberdeen were pretty relentless at home in terms of putting teams to the sword and racking up a few goals in the process, and that's just what happened to us that day. But the second game, I thought the first half was fairly end-to-end. I thought we were excellent for the first 20-25 minutes, and as you say, the penalties, it was when VAR was going handball daft. Wasn't it? Anything that brushed somebody's hand was getting given as a handball. But the second half, that's the most penned in I've seen us this season. And we really struggled to get out of half, but that was kind of the other side of Livy, was the dogged determination to try and get a result in that game. And I think for that alone, we were worth the result. But yeah, I think it's looking at the game, Aberdeen at Pittodrie have been a bit of a different animal to how they've been away from home. Certainly looking at the form guide, I think you guys have picked up 25 points at Pittodrie, only 7 on the road. So it's going to be a more difficult game, but certainly from us looking at you guys in the process, you're a team bereft of confidence at the moment. You were talking about our cup defeats. I won't mention your one, but but yeah, we need to go there and try and frustrate and get all the angry Aberdonians turning on the team early doors, because even at the best of times, you guys are miserable. So it's good to try.
We like a moan up here, but for those that are watching this episode on YouTube, of course, you'll see the Sky Sports ticker that's going along the bottom, and I've kind of dubbed this game in inverted comma the top 6 hopes battle. I certainly feel from an Aberdeen point of view, this is a must-win game, more so with the fact, of course, you've got that game in hand against bottom of the table Dundee United, as I said already, that we need to make sure we're, and I can't believe I'm saying this already, is like cling on to the coattails of the likes of yourselves, St Mirren. Of course, St Mirren tripped up in their game in hand as well. So with that, I think we would still just be a point behind yourselves with a win at the weekend. But from a Livingston point of view, is this a game that you view if you can come out without defeat, that further enhances how confident you are of finishing in the top 6?
Yeah, we spoke about it on the podcast for a good few weeks. We always looked at January as being our make or break month for the season in terms of the fixtures that we had, and always looked at February as the month that it could potentially come unstuck because of the games we had. We went unbeaten in January. Our games this month, we've had both sides of the Old Firm, obviously a trip to yourselves, and we always earmarked the game at home to Kilmarnock as being the must-win game, which we comfortably dispatched the Kilmarnock on the day as well. We were fantastic, especially the first 45 minutes. But if we could go to Pittodrie and take something, we've got 3 home games back-to-back in March. I think Hibs, Dundee United and Ross County, all games that we would look at trying to get maximum points from. And that would set us up pretty well, I think, for certainly a top 6 push. So kind of always looked at the Aberdeen game, didn't know what Aberdeen we were going to be getting because of the pressure that was on Goodwin at the time. We didn't know if there'd be a new manager in. So we weren't sure really what to expect from this game. But if we went up there and got a point, I'd be more than happy with the result. Certainly, we've got good fixtures on paper in March and April, which would set us up for the top 6.
Yeah, and I think that's the crucial bit that I looked at that last night as well when I was kind of looking at who you guys have got between now and the end of the split, who we've got. We've also got home fixtures to come against Kilmarnock, who are pretty terrible on the road, although it's a bit of a rich from an Aberdeen fan saying that. But Hearts and Rangers also have to come to Pittodrie. But then we've got away trips to United and Ross County, where we've not won at this season, and St Johnstone, which was one of only 2 calendar away wins last year. So really tricky, and this is why I feel there's a lot of, for me, importance on the game this weekend, and it feels probably like back in those days in 2002 for yourself, where Aberdeen Livingston suddenly became a huge fixture that has a lot riding on it. But of course, Livingston coming into this game will have to change their team that started last time out, with Stefan Omiyonga likely to be suspended after his 2 bookings, culminating in a red card. And what about Bruce Anderson as well? I know he picked up a knock in that game against Inverness. Is he likely to be fit for the weekend?
Going by what Davies said, I think Bruce should be available. Probably looked at the Rangers game as, what's the point risking him? From what he said, it was a contact injury, so it wasn't anything too serious. So hopefully that means Bruce is back, available. It's something we've been crying out for on the podcast all season, because first half of the season, Bruce was in and out the side because he struggled with an ankle injury from the tail end of last season. And I think he redid it a couple of times when he was coming back. But then we've had Nubly out from after the World Cup break. So we've never been able to get the 2 of them on the park for a sustained period of time. And the 2 or 3 occasions that we have had them, we've caused teams absolute chaos. And for me, if we can get the pair of them playing regularly, that gives us as well, again, a massive boost trying to go for the top 6, because, I mean, you guys have seen it firsthand, the sort of problems that Nubly can cause, and Bruce as well. Yeah. He's a goal scorer, and last year he got 13. He would have broke a club record last year, I'm sure, had he been able to see out the last couple of months of the season. But both of them, getting them both on the park at the same time is going to be pivotal, I think.
Yeah, and how much of a blow is Omiyonga missing out this weekend?
Omiyonga's a strange one, because I would say midfield's probably our strongest area of the pitch in terms of competition for places. Omiyonga's been in and out the side recently. He played a lot more in January due to injuries and suspensions, because we had both Scott Pittman and Jason Holt out at the same time because they got red cards at the tail end of last year, start of this year. So, yeah, Omiyonga's been in and out the side. The guys who have been playing a lot more regularly, Stephen Kelly's been almost a first name on the team sheet in recent weeks, and he's been an excellent addition since we signed him from Rangers in the summer. Really good technical player on the ball. He offers a bit of a goal threat from the middle of the park as well, and he's kind of having his own goal of the season competition with himself just now with the goals that he has scored. But yeah, Omiyonga's been in and out the side, but that's probably the area of the pitch we struggle to predict week on week. Yeah. I think is that midfield three. For me, I would see it being possibly Stephen Kelly, Sean Kelly and Pittman, but it could easily be Andrew Shinnie could come in there, Jason Holt could come in there. So yeah, it wouldn't have even been a guarantee that Omiyonga would have started the game. So as I say, that's probably the toughest area of the pitch for us to predict.
Yeah, and the Kellys have been a great addition to fantasy football for that play it as well. How do you expect Davy to line up this weekend? Obviously, if Bruce is fit and available, do you expect him to go two up top with Bruce and Nouble? Or do you expect him to kind of sit in and, as you said, make the Aberdonians angry, get the crowd frustrated? Because, I mean, people certainly in the Aberdeen support will feel that, you know, the season's kind of over. I still think top six is there for us to achieve. And this game, for me, really is hugely important to that. And do you think Davy will ride that and try and turn the crowd and sit in and frustrate? Because, you know, if you look at some of the data in terms of Livingston, it does take a lot for teams to break down Livingston. You're a team that don't concede a lot of early goals as well, especially away from home.
Yeah, Davy's attitude, whenever we go to the likes of Pittodrie, Tynecastle, Weaster Road, the Old Firm, it's always a case of try and keep it tight. I would say first 20 minutes, half an hour, and frustrate and get the crowds turning, because they typically do at these places, because they have that kind of level of expectation. You're playing Little Old Livingston, you should be wiping the floor with them. But we've certainly made a few teams come unstuck in that regard. But yeah, Davy will go there to try and frustrate. I think we typically set up with a 4-3-3 or a kind of 4-3-2-1. The guys that have been playing most regularly out wide recently for us have been Nouble on the left-hand side, and young lad Stephen Bradley was signed from Hibs in the January window. He's been very, very good, young 20-year-old, and he's certainly a bright prospect for us going forward. He's played a lot recently, so I don't imagine Davy tweaking the shape too much from that, but in some of these games he has gone to a back three before. He does have the personnel to do that, so that might be another option, but I would assume he would be going with a 4-3-3, but obviously the likes of Nouble, Bradley would obviously drop in when we don't have possession to give us that little bit added protection.
Yeah, really interesting. I like to hear how your opposition fans think they're going to line up when it comes to facing Aberdeen. And of course, you know, you mentioned there Davy setting up to frustrate. Of course, you mentioned before we recorded, of course, points away at Tynecastle and Ibrox already this season, so you can go to so-called difficult places and pull off results that, as you said, Little Old Livingston are maybe not expected to do. So certainly one for Robson and co not to take Livingston lightly. But of course, Euan, as we said, Aberdeen under different stewardship from the last time the two teams met. What are you fearful of from an Aberdeen side going into this game, or is there anything you fear from Aberdeen?
I think the obvious threats from you guys is your two up top in Miovski and Duke. I think between them in the league, they've got something like 24 goals. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was just kind of my glance on my research earlier on for our podcast. But they're the obvious threat. So for me, it's stopping the service into them initially. Where I think we can get at Aberdeen is defensively. I think it's 51 goals you've conceded in the league, which at this point in the season is pretty atrocious, to put it bluntly. And I think from the outside looking in at Aberdeen, you always looked, when you were under Derek McInnes, as you really had to work for opportunities against Aberdeen. Very difficult to break down. I feel that they have a soft centre about them now. And I know you've had a couple of additions in the January window at centre-back, but it's essentially a brand new back four again halfway through the season. So for me, that's where we need to be trying to open Aberdeen up and cause them problems is certainly, and Nouble is capable of doing that against some of the best defenders in the league. The opening day against Rangers is just prime example. He had all 4 Rangers defenders on a booking in the first half alone by himself. So he's capable of causing those sort of problems. But yeah, certainly from our point of view, it's a case of trying to stop the service into the likes of Miovski and Duke, because if you stop the service into them, that's, it's limiting the number of chances they're going to get.
Yeah, and I suppose that's where someone like Leighton Clarkson becomes pivotal in that midfield, as we saw last time out at Pittodrie against Motherwell, where we kind of adapted and created a lot of space for Leighton in the middle of the park to dictate balls to Duke and Miovski. And I just wonder, as you said, your midfield tends to be difficult to pick. If Martindale's maybe looked at that and puts the likes of a Jason Holt on him just to man mark him out the game, or you know what Jason Holt's like, he loves a niggly foul that seems to never get booked, as the ABZ guys like to pick up on. But maybe just someone that can just kind of rough up that midfield. But of course now, with an Aberdeen midfield bolstered by Graham Shinney's arrival, you've got Yilba Ramadani in there as well. And of course, kind of an interesting one going into this weekend as well is Ross McCrory returning from suspension, is how he fits back into this team. Does he slot in at right back, taking out Matty Kenny, but again, I know not a natural right back, or does he have to sit out for a place on the bench? So as well with Liam Scales returning as well, really interesting to see how Barry Robson approaches that defence. Of course, as you said, one of the worst defences, if not the worst defence in the league, with quite that alarming stat of how many goals we've conceded. And with both Newbley and Bruce Anderson likely to start the game, I'm sure those two licking their lips at the opportunities that potentially coming their way this weekend. Yeah,
exactly. Bruce is one of those, you guys have watched him enough to know he's a goal scorer if he gets given opportunities, and he has that kind of poacher's instinct as well. But Bruce has typically played pretty well against Aberdeen since leaving you guys, and I'm sure we were talking on the podcast, even if Bruce is maybe at 90% or 80% fit, I would still chuck him in, because I think the adrenaline of trying to silence a few of the doubters up at Pittodrie would give him the incentive alone to try and get a goal. So yeah, I think if we can get, as I say, Bruce and Newbley in the side at the weekend, that's a really good starting point for us in terms of trying to grab a couple of goals, essentially, and cause Aberdeen problems at the top end of the park.
Yeah, and I suppose something that we've always discussed on this show, certainly in recent weeks, is the kind of inability in this Aberdeen side to get back into a game when we go a goal behind. I think we're the only team that have not taken anything from certainly 3 points when we've gone behind this season. I don't even think we've actually come back to claim a point when we've gone behind as well. So just shows the kind of mental weakness that we've got in this side. But, as you said, we certainly do have players within the Aberdeen side that can cause Livingston problems. But I think you're absolutely right. If Livingston can stifle that service, you kind of stifle Aberdeen. So it's really important that we set up with that game plan to kind of look to maybe even get in behind Livingston, which is obviously where we had success in that opening game at Pittodrie between the two sides. But also hopefully show that in-game ability to change up like we did against Motherwell. If that balls over the top and in behind aren't working, try and play through Livingston. But, we all know how compact and hard to break down Livingston can make themselves. So I think this game's a really intriguing one. It's going to show a lot about this Aberdeen team. Do they have that capability to go out and beat a team, again, as I've said, with the greatest respect, and us as Aberdeen fans are expecting to win, but knowing that this game is not easy, because from a Livingston point of view, as you've rightly said, this goes a huge way to helping your top six ambitions if you can come away from Pittodrie with something.
Yeah, exactly. It sets us up perfectly for the next couple of months worth of fixtures, especially if we were to go up there and win. I think you would put a lot of Aberdeen fans in that bracket as saying that is our season over if we were to go up and win. And we have done that the last couple of seasons, game tail end of last year, which kind of secured safety for us essentially. And then the season before during COVID, when we were on that fantastic unbeaten run, went up there and won 2-0. So we've had some success at Pittodrie in recent seasons, and typically take the 5-0 game out of it, the games tend to be pretty tight. I think there's, again, since we've been promoted, I think there's only maybe 2 games that have had over, or 3 games that have had a kind of 2-0 scoreline, or two clear goals to kind of separate the sides. So typically tend to be pretty close encounters. So I think if we can go there and frustrate and get the crowd turning, produce anything like the first 40 minutes we had earlier on in the season at Pittodrie, we'll be more than worth at least a point in the game. But as you say, it would go a massive, massive way in terms of our ambitions of getting in the top 6.
Yeah, I suppose it's that age-old footballing cliche about momentum as well. As you said, Livingston, especially if they come away from Pittodrie with 3 points, I probably do agree that myself and a lot of other Aberdeen fans would get the sense of that is the season over in terms of trying to catch those around, well, certainly those above us anyway. But 3 points for the Dons this weekend would set us up nicely for a trip to Tannadice. I know it's, again, given our away form, but these are teams we should be beating if we want to have those solid ambitions of finishing inside the top 6. Again, going to that question mark around the players, how much desire do they actually have to want to be in there, to want to get into Europe next season? Of course, certain players in this team that are starting, of course, playing for contracts. You look at the likes of Matt Kennedy, especially out of contract. A lot of talk around his future. So, like I said, this game's got a lot of intrigue around it. It doesn't often feel that Aberdeen v Livingston should have a lot of intrigue around it, but it certainly does. But Euan, great to catch up with you and hear your perspective on the game this weekend. Are you guys coming up for the game?
I'll be making the 12-hour round trip that Angus seems to think takes to get to Pittodrie. I'll make a wee stop in at Forfar. That's where mum and dad stay these days, so I'll make a wee stop on the way up. But yes, I will be up at Pittodrie. I'll be one of the 5 Livingston fans getting shat on by the Seagulls in the away end.
Yeah, well, it's a shame. So we need 2 minibuses then if you're taking a detour in via Forfar. But good to see her making that long trip. I wasn't going to mention the time, but
we even mentioned it on our one. Angus mentions it now without me even prompting it. So
brilliant. I'm glad to see it's carried on. But yeah, Euan, great to have you on the podcast again. And I'd say all the best for Saturday, but I definitely wouldn't mean it. So all the best for the rest of the season out with the weekend.
Nah, I'd fully expect that. I'd say the same to you as well, Glen. So thanks for having me on again. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Well, there we have it. The words from Euan Rankine of the TalkLivi podcast, helping me preview the weekend's clash against the Livi Lions. Remember to check out the TalkLivi podcast. They are available on YouTube audio platforms as well. So if you are tuning in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, for example, search TalkLivi on your usual podcast platform, and their preview episode will be released on those platforms. So be sure to check it out. Thanks also to Jonny Main for joining me to review the Celtic game. Hopefully when we get Jonny on, he will have something positive to speak about one day. And thank you to all of you that have tuned in via audio, YouTube again. And Calum will be back with me next week to look back at this Livingston game and preview, of course, that trip to Tannadice that is coming up as well. So until next time, thanks very much for tuning in to Red Tinted Glasses. And in Calum's absence, come on you Reds!